So here's a question. Every time you hear the news, they say things like the economy grew 2% last quarter or GDP is down. Sounds important, but what even is GDP? And how did they calculate a number that's supposed to represent an entire country's economy? Let's break it down. Section 1. What even is GDP? GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, basically the total dollar value of everything a country produces in a given period. Think of it like the country's giant report card. If the number goes up, things are generally good. Businesses are active. People are spending. If it goes down, that's usually bad news. Less production, fewer jobs, slower growth. In short, GDP measures how much stuff your country makes and how much people spend on it. Section 2. What counts and what doesn't? Not everything is included in GDP. It only counts final goods and services made within a country's borders. So, a car made in Detroit counts toward US GDP, even if it's sold in Canada. But a Ford built in Mexico does not count toward the US. It goes into Mexico's GDP instead. It also only counts new production. A used car sold again this year doesn't count because it was already included when it was first made. And unpaid things, like cleaning your own house or volunteering, don't show up either. GDP only tracks what's bought and sold for money. Section 3. The three ways to calculate it. Economists have three main methods to calculate GDP. They all lead to the same number, just from different angles. 1. The spending approach, aka the easy one. This one adds up everything people, businesses, and the government spends. The formula looks like this. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M, where C equals consumption, what people buy. I equals investment, what businesses spend on factories, machines, houses, etc. G equals government spending. X minus M equals exports minus imports, what you sell to the world minus what you buy from it. So if Americans buy a lot of stuff and businesses build more factories, GDP rises. 2. The income approach. This one adds up everyone's income, wages, rent, interest, and profits. Because in theory, every dollar spent becomes someone else's income. 3. The production approach. Also called the value added method. It adds up the value each stage of production creates, like raw materials to factory to final product. Section 4. Nominal versus real GDP. Not all GDP growth is real growth. Sometimes prices just go up because of inflation. That's why economists use nominal GDP includes price changes. Real GDP adjusts for inflation to show actual growth in production. Example, if GDP rises 5% but inflation is 3%, real growth is only around 2%. Section 5. GDP per capita, the standard of living metric. You might also hear GDP per capita. That's just GDP divided by the number of people. It shows how much economic output each person on average contributes or benefits from. So, a small country with high GDP per capita, like Switzerland, can be wealthier per person than a huge country like India, even if India's total GDP is bigger. Section 6. Why GDP isn't perfect. Here's the thing, GDP doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't measure happiness, inequality, or environmental health. If a factory pollutes a river, GDP still goes up because money was spent cleaning it. And unpaid work, like parenting or volunteering, never shows up. So GDP is a great measure of activity, not necessarily well being. Section 7. Why governments care so much? Because GDP is basically a country's scoreboard. It affects everything from elections to stock markets to your job security. If GDP is rising, the governments brag. If GDP is shrinking, then everyone panics. And central banks often step in to cut interest rates or boost spending. In short, GDP tells us whether the economy is growing, slowing, or shrinking. Conclusion. So, what is GDP? It's the grand total of everything your country makes, buys, and sells, like a yearly performance review for the economy. But remember, bigger isn't always better. A country can have a huge GDP and still struggle with inequality or poor quality of life. GDP tells us what's happening with money, not necessarily what's happening with people. Like and subscribe. And in the next video, we'll break down why GDP growth isn't the same as getting richer.